She laughed. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the words, not exactly, but the laugh before she said them. Light, casual, almost bored. Then, honestly, I hate being with him. I feel nothing. I was standing 5 feet away. Not hiding. Not creeping. Just standing there with a basket of clean laundry, unsure whether to move or melt through the floor. She hadn't noticed me. Hadn't even glanced up from her phone. Her back was turned, hair still wet from a shower, one leg crossed over the other like she was talking about the weather. And I just stood there, holding socks. The next minute felt like a hallucination. I heard her sipping tea. Heard her say something about how I always look tired. Something about how I cling. Then another laugh. Then silence. Then the TV turning on. I walked upstairs, dropped the basket on the bed, sat down, and stared at the floor for what might have been an hour. My hands were shaking. I remember thinking, she must have known I was there. She must have. But she didn't come up. She didn't say anything. She didn't even ask why I skipped dinner that night. And the next morning, she asked if I could pick up oat milk. Like nothing happened. So I did. I went out and bought oat milk. Smiled. Paid in cash. Walked home. But something in me had started to break. Not like glass, but like rope. Quiet, slow, fiber by fiber. 3 days later, I left. No note. No suitcase. Just took my keys, my ID, and left. I didn't even know where I was going. But I knew this. She didn't know I was gone. Not yet. And when she finally realized, that's when things got truly strange. The first 24 hours after I left were the quietest of my life. I turned off location sharing. Left my phone on, but muted. I expected her to notice. To panic. Maybe text something cold like, "Where are you?" Or maybe not at all. But as the hours dragged on, the silence became heavier than any accusation she could have thrown at me. I stayed in a rundown Airbnb above a closed pizzeria. The kind of place that smells like cleaning spray and regret. No TV. Just a mattress, a lamp, and a chipped nightstand. I laid there all night, listening to the buzzing fridge in the next room, thinking about the way she laughed. Not what she said, but the way she said it. That carefree tone, like she had already detached months ago, and I was the only one who hadn't caught up. By the second day, I began to wonder if I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Maybe she wasn't even talking about me. Maybe I'd gone mad. Maybe I wanted to hear it. After all, who just leaves without a confrontation? Without even asking, "Who were you talking to?" But then, around noon, I got a phone call. Not from her. It was an unknown number. Local area code. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to. The voice on the other end was male. Older. Hesitant. "Is this Corbin?" I froze. "Yes, who is this?" He exhaled like he'd just confirmed something he didn't want to be true. "I think we need to talk." About Flora. My blood turned to ice. I sat up straight, nearly knocking the phone from my hand. "Who are you?" He hesitated again. "Let's just say, I'm someone who knows she's not who you think she is." There was a long pause. I could hear traffic behind him, maybe wind. Then he said, "I know why you left. But you should know, she's planning something. And you're not supposed to know about it." And just like that, click. He hung up. I stared at my phone like it was going to explode. My chest was pounding. I didn't recognize the voice, and yet, something about it felt familiar. Not like someone I knew personally. More like someone I'd overheard once. A memory buried deep, scratching its way back up. I tried calling the number back. It went straight to voicemail. No name. Just a robotic message. "This user's voicemail has not been set up." I sat there, phone still in my hand, feeling a slow sickness crawl through my veins. Why would a stranger call me? How did he know my name? How did he know I left? And more importantly, what was Flora planning? Whatever this was, it wasn't just a bad marriage anymore. It was something else. Something I wasn't ready for. But it was already too late. Because that night, I found something in my email that changed everything. I didn't sleep at all that night. The call kept replaying in my mind. The stranger's warning, the pause before he said her name, the cold finality in his voice. I felt like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. And the worst part was, I couldn't wake up. The walls of that little Airbnb felt tighter with each hour. I left the lights on. I couldn't bring myself to close my eyes. Around 3 a.m., I opened my laptop. Not to work, not to distract myself. Just to stare at the screen, maybe check the weather. Something mindless. That's when I saw it. A new email. No subject line. No message body. Just an attachment. It was from a burner address. One of those generic strings of letters and numbers. No name, no signature, no trace. My instincts screamed not to open it, but curiosity is cruel when you're unraveling. Against my better judgment, I clicked. The file was a single PDF. 8 pages. The first page was blank except for one line at the top. You don't know what she's capable of. My fingers went cold. The next page was a scanned screenshot, a chat log. Not from a messaging app one recognized. Maybe something encrypted. But the names, they were there. Flora was one of them. And the messages, they weren't flirty. They weren't romantic. They were strategic. Lines like, if he's out of the way by the end of the month, everything clears. He's weak. He won't fight. He'll disappear if I push. We've tested it. He always runs. I couldn't breathe. I clicked to the next page. More messages, this time with dates that lined up exactly with days I remembered us fighting. Days when I thought I had overreacted. When she said I was too sensitive. When she told me I was making things up. All of it. Engineered. Manipulated. I kept reading. Page after page. It wasn't just some random affair or some emotional betrayal. It was a campaign. A coordinated dismantling of our marriage, and I wasn't even the target. I was the obstacle. The last page was another blank one. Just a timestamp. No message. And at the bottom, one more line. She's watching you now. I slammed the laptop shut so fast it nearly bounced off the table. I stood up. My knees were shaking. I stared at the window, at the shadows moving outside. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt like I wasn't alone. Like someone had already been there. Like someone knew I'd opened that file. And worst of all, what if she sent it? What if this was part of it? I was spiraling, I knew that. But paranoia wasn't irrational anymore. Not after what I read. Not after that phone call. And not with what came next. Because just before sunrise, I got a text from Flora. Just 5 words. We need to talk. Now. I stared at the text for what felt like hours. We need to talk. Now. 5 words. Innocent on the surface, but they coiled around my brain like wire. After everything, the overheard confession, the phone call, the email, she had the audacity to act like she was the one who needed clarity? I didn't reply. Instead, I just watched the little dots appear, then disappear, then come back again. She was typing something, deleting it, rethinking, and for some reason, that unsettled me more than if she had said something cruel. A few minutes later, the second text arrived. I know you're gone. You left your spare keys. That stopped my breath. She didn't sound angry. Didn't ask why. Just stated it like a fact. Like she had been expecting it. Like it was part of the script. And maybe it was. I didn't respond. I powered off my phone completely. Then I just sat there on the edge of the mattress in that stale, dim room, hands gripping my knees, trying not to panic. But my mind kept circling the same thought. She knew I'd leave. Not hoped. Planned. I went back to the PDF. I reopened it, this time scanning every message, looking for a clue, a code, something that would explain why. Why dismantle a marriage instead of just leaving? Why play a game when she could have just walked away? And then something odd hit me. The screenshots. They looked real, but some details didn't make sense. The app interface didn't match any known platform. There were no timestamps on the messages, only on the pages. And one of the usernames. I had seen it before. Not in a message. Not in a browser tab. But in a dream. Weeks ago, I had this disjointed nightmare. One of those heavy ones where you wake up feeling like you forgot something important. There was a username floating on a screen, glowing white, fading in and out. Cipher. That same exact name was now in the email file. On page 6, right beneath a line from Flora that said, "He doesn't believe in himself. He'll vanish like always." I felt a sudden chill in my spine. Like I wasn't just being watched, I was being studied. Like everything I did was being written into a playbook I hadn't seen before. I paced the room. Tried to think clearly. Tried to convince myself I was just unraveling, just sleep-deprived, just projecting. But then the power in the room flickered. Just once. Just enough to kill the light bulb above me for half a second. And when it came back on, my phone was lit up again. It was on. I know I powered it off. I know I held the button and swiped. But now, the screen glowed softly on the nightstand, showing her face. Incoming call. Flora. I let it ring. And ring. And then I did the only thing that felt right in that moment. I picked up, but I didn't speak. I wanted to hear her voice first. I needed to know if it still sounded like hers. There was silence on the other end. Then a breath. Then, softly, Calmly, her voice came through. But it wasn't her. Not the way I remembered it. Not the way someone calls a husband. Not even someone angry or betrayed. She just said one word. Corbin. And then, nothing but static. I didn't sleep that night either. Not after that call. Not after hearing her say my name in that slow, deliberate tone, as if testing the word. Like she was confirming I was still real. Still reachable. Still playing my part. I kept telling myself maybe I imagined it. Maybe the call glitched. Maybe the voice just sounded different because I hadn't heard it in days. But something in my gut wouldn't let it go. It wasn't just the voice. It was the absence of anything behind it. No emotion. No urgency. Just static, a name, and silence. The next morning, I needed air. I walked down to the street, through the smell of burnt dough from the pizza shop downstairs, and across to a small park with 2 benches and 1 dying tree. I sat there with a coffee that tasted like metal and watched a kid try to fly a paper plane in the wind. And then I saw her car. Across the street. Parked half a block down. Same dent on the bumper. Same hanging dream catcher from the mirror. The moment I noticed it, the lights flicked on and then off. Just once. A pulse. I didn't move. I didn't panic. I just stared. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe I was imagining things again. Maybe someone else drove the same model. But when I finally stood up to get a closer look, the car was gone. No sound. No movement. Just gone. As if it had never been there at all. That's when I stopped believing this was only about a broken marriage. I went back to the Airbnb and locked the door behind me. I pulled the curtain shut, turned on every light, and opened my laptop again. This time, I searched for the name from the messages, Cipher. There were no obvious results. No social media. No usernames. No forums. But after an hour of digging through back pages of obscure tech blogs, I found one post, nearly a decade old, about a data mining group that allegedly infiltrated private therapy apps in the early 2010s. It was mostly dismissed as a conspiracy theory, but one name kept repeating in the comment threads. Cipher 9. Same spelling. Same caps. And one line in particular made my blood freeze. Cipher 9 doesn't just watch. It whispers. The comment had no likes. No replies. But it felt like it was written just for me. I sat back in the chair, mind unraveling, heart racing. If any of this was real, if Flora had been part of something deeper, then I had been nothing more than a test subject. A case file. A blueprint. But why me? What made me worth targeting? The answer came sooner than I expected. That afternoon, I got a letter. Hand-delivered. No return address. Slipped under the door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with my name printed across the top. And underneath it, a question. Do you remember your first session? My hands went cold. I hadn't told anyone about therapy. Not even Flora. I started seeing a therapist 2 years ago, quietly, through an anonymous platform, after a panic attack that sent me to the ER. I'd never spoken a word about it to anyone. Not a friend, not my parents, and definitely not her. I flipped the paper over. There was nothing on the back. But the envelope? Inside it, tucked neatly behind the letter, was a printed transcript, word for word, from that first session. And the person I was speaking to back then? Their screen name. The therapist I trusted, who always refused to show their face or give a real name. It was signed at the bottom. I didn't know where to go. I stood in the middle of that tiny room, the transcript in one hand, the envelope in the other, and I swear I could feel something behind the walls. Not a sound, not a person, just a pressure. As if the building itself was watching me hold my own words from 2 years ago. I had no memory of ever saving those sessions. They were anonymous voice calls. No recordings. No summaries. Just short bursts of panic into the void and a stranger replying with clinical calmness. But here, on this page, were my words, transcribed exactly. I remembered saying them. I remembered crying during that first call, whispering that I felt broken, that I didn't know how to ask for help without sounding pathetic. And now someone had printed it out and delivered it to me by hand. I stared at the name at the bottom again. Cipher 9. Not a mistake. Not a coincidence. It wasn't just a username in an old forum or a handle in that fake chat log. This was someone who had been in my life for years. Hiding. Listening. Shaping. I started pacing, thinking through every conversation I'd had with Flora during that time. She did start changing a few months after I began therapy. Subtly. At first, she seemed more attentive, more patient, then suddenly cold, detached. like she was following a manual on how to make me feel simultaneously seen and invisible. Had she known all along? Or had she been fed information, pieces of me, by something else? I needed answers. But the only person who had them was someone I had never actually met. So I did the one thing I never thought I'd do again. I logged back into the therapy platform. I half expected it to be gone. Shut down. Wiped. But it wasn't. The interface had changed, sure. Slicker now. Cleaner. But my login still worked. And once I was inside, it offered a new message thread, something I'd never seen before. At the top, a blinking prompt. Session 0, welcome back, Corbin. I clicked it, and a chat window opened. No sound. Just text. Cipher 9, you left earlier than expected. But you came back. That matters. My hands trembled over the keyboard. Corbin, who are you? The reply was instant. Cipher 9, who I am isn't important. What matters is what you chose to forget. Corbin, you sent me that transcript. You've been watching me. Another pause. Then, Cipher 9, I didn't send it. She did. The room tilted. I felt lightheaded. I typed faster. Corbin, Flora? Why? This time, there was no reply. The window blinked once. Then the screen froze. Locked. I refreshed. Nothing. The message thread vanished. I sat there, staring at the screen, when a knock came at the door. 3 soft knocks. Not hurried. Not frantic. Just deliberate. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I waited, praying it was someone delivering food to the wrong door. A neighbor. Anything. But then the 4th knock came. This one harder. And a voice followed. Soft. Measured. Not hers. Not Flora's. Just one sentence, spoken like a warning. You were never the patient, Corbin. You were the program. And then silence. I rushed to the door, ripped it open. No one there. Just an envelope on the floor. No address. No stamp. No name. I opened it. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Flora, standing in our kitchen, smiling, looking directly at the camera. And in the background, sitting at our table, was me. Except I have no memory of that photo being taken. And the me in that picture? He was smiling back. I stared at the photo for so long, I forgot how to blink. It made no sense. The room was ours, the kitchen exactly as we left it before I disappeared. Same crooked lamp, same wine-stained rug, same chipped plate I refused to throw out because Flora said it had character. And there I was, sitting calmly, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't walked out days ago with no word, no warning, no confrontation. But the most terrifying part wasn't that the version of me in the photo was smiling. It was that he looked happy, not posed, not pretending, just content. I don't even remember the last time I smiled like that in that house. And yet there he was, captured in a frame I never took, at a moment I never lived. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a long time. I left the Airbnb within the hour. I stuffed everything I brought into a trash bag and checked out early without saying a word. I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. Not with that photo. Not with that voice at the door. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where to go. I just drove. Fast. Far. Out of the city and into a small town I barely remembered passing years ago on a road trip. I stopped at a motel off the highway. Not the kind with key cards and flat screens. The kind where you still get an actual key, and the ice machine doesn't work, and the front desk clerk doesn't ask for ID if you pay in cash. I taped the photo to the mirror. I needed to keep looking at it, to prove it was real, to make sure it didn't change. But as the hours passed, something began to claw at the back of my mind. It wasn't just the photo that didn't make sense. It was my memory. Details started to feel slippery. I tried to replay the night I left Flora, her voice, the words I overheard, but now I couldn't remember what she was wearing. I couldn't remember what day of the week it was. I couldn't remember if it had been raining or not. The scene was there in my mind, but it was blurring, like an old VHS tape left in the sun. So I did something desperate. I called my old friend Jonah, the only person I trusted enough to tell everything. He picked up on the second ring, his voice groggy and confused. Corbin? Dude, where have you been? I ignored the question. Jonah, listen, you've been to my house, right? Flora and I, we had you over last year? He paused. No, man. You guys never invited me over. You said Flora didn't like guests. My chest tightened. That's not true. You were there. You brought that bottle of whiskey we never opened. I don't even drink whiskey, he said, almost laughing. Are you messing with me? I tried to speak, but my throat went dry. Corbin, He added quietly. You doing okay, man? You sound off. I hung up. I felt like the floor dropped out beneath me. Was he lying? Or was I? I grabbed my phone and opened my photo gallery. Scrolled back through the years, looking for any photo of Jonah in our house. Any proof. Birthdays. New Year's. Anything. Nothing. Not a single photo of him. Not a single tag post. It was like those memories had been wiped. Or never happened. I turned back to the Polaroid. Looked closer. And that's when I saw it. Barely visible in the upper right corner, behind the curtain in the kitchen window. A reflection. Not mine. Not Flora's. Someone else. Watching. Standing just outside the glass. A tall figure in black, face obscured by the glare of the kitchen light. Unmoving. A silhouette, but unmistakably human. I didn't notice it before because I had been so focused on myself in the frame. But now that I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. There was someone else in the house that day. Someone holding the camera. Someone watching both of us. And I finally understood. This wasn't about Flora. It never was. It was about them. I didn't sleep again. How could I, with that photo taped to the mirror, my own face smiling back at me from a moment I never lived, while a stranger stood behind the curtain in my kitchen, watching me like I was part of an experiment? It all started to make sense, in the most impossible way. The therapy app, the stranger's call, Flora's detachment, the chat logs, the messages, even the Polaroid. They weren't random. They were tests, probes, triggers, and somehow, I was the subject. Not just in a metaphorical sense, but in a very real, very orchestrated way. But the question that wouldn't leave me alone was, why? Why me? What was so special about a barely functioning wedding videographer with no confidence, no social life, and a marriage falling apart at the seams? That answer came at sunrise. I woke up, or maybe I never really slept, to the sound of my motel room door unlocking. Not knocking, unlocking. I froze. The door creaked open slowly, and I sat up in bed, heart slamming in my chest, waiting to see who, or what, would appear. But no one entered. Instead, on the floor inside the doorway, someone had placed a small package. Plain, brown, tied with string. No markings, no label. I waited, listened. Nothing but birds outside and the soft whir of the broken AC unit. After minutes of silence, I stood up, walked over, and opened the box. Inside was an old external hard drive. A sticky note attached said only, "Final session. Play it." I plugged it into my laptop. A folder popped up instantly. /Corbin/exit. Inside, a single video file. Session_0_final. MOV. I hesitated, then opened it. It wasn't surveillance footage. It wasn't Flora. It wasn't some hidden camera moment from our house. It was me. Sitting in a blank white room, lit with soft ambient light. No walls. No furniture. Just me, in the same clothes I wore the day I left Flora. I looked calm. Whole. A version of myself I didn't recognize, but wished I could be. Then I, the version on screen, spoke. "If you're watching this, it worked. You broke the loop. You walked away. That's all we ever needed you to do." I felt chills crawl up my neck. You were stuck. Not just with Flora. Not just with your memories. But inside yourself. You let people define you. You waited to be chosen. You thought disappearing meant failure. But it was the only way out. The video me smiled. Not the forced kind. Not a performance. A quiet, genuine smile. You weren't the program, Corbin. You were the key. And now it's over. The screen faded to black. A single line of text appeared. "Restore begins now." And then my laptop shut off completely. No blue screen. No warning. Just silence. I sat in that silence for what felt like forever. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I just breathed. Really breathed. The kind of deep, full breath I hadn't taken in years. Something had shifted. Not in the world. Not in some government file or sci-fi conspiracy. But in me. I didn't go back home that day. I didn't call Flora. I didn't need to. Instead, I drove. I passed the city, the suburbs, the old roads I used to avoid, and found myself near the coast. A quiet, open stretch of beach where the sun was just starting to climb out of the ocean like it had been waiting for me. I walked to the edge of the water, shoes in one hand, salt in the air, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't afraid. Not of being alone. Not of disappearing. Not of what I didn't understand. Some part of me had finally accepted that I may never get all the answers. That maybe Flora wasn't the villain. that maybe none of them were. Maybe they were all mirrors, just reflecting what I refused to look at. But I was looking now. And for once, I wasn't running. I was finally free.